Good morning, everybody, and we want to welcome you to the Ergonomics of Hoteling Shared and Hybrid Post-COVID Work Environments. And we apologize, apparently the last meeting ran over, so we're welcoming you and thanking you for your patience. My name is Julia Jensen. I'm the Ergonomic Specialist with University of California, San Diego. And I'm here with Vanessa Curtis, who is the ergonomist from University of California, San Francisco. So let's begin. Next slide. So we really want to welcome you all because this has been a challenging time, and we're all working together on this to navigate through this. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we'll be addressing those as we can, just to let you know. So with this change of workplace, the workplace is definitely changing. And for some of this is challenging territory. We're going from some of us from home-based offices to hoteling and shared workspaces, and we really need to figure out how to weave in ergonomics to make a workplace that really works. Next slide. So let's start with where we are. So according to the Gallup poll, a recent Gallup poll, relatively recent, approximately 70% of people in April of 2020 were working at home or sometimes at home. And that percentage kind of leveled off to about 56% in February of 2022. But what we know is it's all changing. How many of you, and I can't see your hands raised, have already made the change? Some of you are planning the change. Some of you are, tentatively talking about the change from remote to shared and hotel workspaces. Well, one thing is sure, that wise leaders are learning and evolving, and that smart companies will develop a plan for hybrid and shared work and leave lots of room to modify, to customize, revise, and adapt. And that's what we want to do, is kind of give you what we did initially that's open for customization and revision, because the times really are changing. Next slide. So to give you an overview of what we're going to go through, we're going to talk to you about what we determined were the basics for ergonomics in the shared post-COVID work environment, some best practices that will help you navigate through that shift, and then some resources and guidelines to help you implement sound ergonomic strategies. Next slide. So let's start with the basics. Next. So with COVID, a lot have changed, the way we work, the way we live, and we're really starting to open up to the new normal. Previously, the term remote was used, but not as much as now, performing job duties offsite, sometimes at home, sometimes at coffee shops, goodness knows where. And then hybrid is something that we're weaving in more into our conversation these days, where you split between working remotely and working on site. And then there's the other term that's becoming more and more popular, shared and hoteling workspaces, where you have a work bank, a bank of spaces used by multiple people. But with all of those, we really want to highlight that ergonomics is key, because we have so many different types of individuals, sizes, proportions, capacities, medical conditions. And what we want to do is really create shared workstations with adjustability and flexibility, mostly through furniture. Next slide. So what we did at the University of California, we got the ergonomists together, and here's a picture of them on the far upper corner. We got together to collaborate and share information. What we did was we put together some, not requirements, but guidelines for the basic shared workstations, what ergonomic desk setups were necessary, access, accessories, storage, and educational resources. And so what we're going to do today is kind of give you a snapshot of what those are, because it was a lengthy document, and we just have a short amount of time to just give you an idea. Next slide. So let's start with the desk and chairs of a shared office space. So we know that in these shared office spaces, it's really designed for working with a lot of multiple users. So what we decided is that we would use height adjustable, user adjustable sit to stand desks, that we would make them a height of 22 inches to 48 inches, a depth of 30 inches to help with the monitor. And we also wanted to have two widths. One would be for computers, smaller desks, 48 inches for just computer work, and a larger workspace if you were doing paperwork and other tasks, that's 60 inches. We also had previously come up with requirements for chairs, which is another document that we developed, and we encouraged each of our locations to work with the local ergonomists to discuss chairs and specifics. Next slide. What we also wanted to have people include, kind of as a template for the shared office configuration, were laptops, and we wanted to make sure that the laptops were used with external keyboards, mice, and screen, and a monitor elevated to eye level. We also encourage people not to use this laptop for more than 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours without those items. To make it easy when people go to a desk setup, we wanted to include a universal docking station for different types of computers. And of course, I just mentioned the keyboard and mouse. And you want to have the mouse and keyboard or other items available for checkout. Maybe people brought them from home, or maybe you provided them at both locations. And this would be accompanied by a height adjustable monitor. And in the age of Zoom, which we're on now, we want to make sure that everybody has access. So we encourage those stations to come equipped with checkout or headsets, cell phone, landline, or plugged into laptop line. And because people have different video capacities, you either have a built-in to your monitor, laptop, or maybe you needed to purchase a webcam. Next slide. We also wanted to include the remote worker. While we didn't make a document of requirements for guidelines for the remote worker, we did have tip sheets, guideline sheets. We used the Cardenas web-based tutorial for home-based working to make sure that people working at a station like the one on the far left were able to adjust their station, and then people working in alternate stations, let's say the kitchen or a dining room table, would also have guidelines to make themselves safer. Next slide. So now that we've talked about what we need in the previous slide, we're going to talk about a couple of best practice items. So let's start with this one, workspace preview. So let's say you've got people and they're working at home, and all of a sudden you say, you have to start working in a hoteling space. Some people are a little nervous, trepidation. So a good idea is to give the employees an idea of what the train's going to look like before they start. A preview of the workstation setup, maybe some equipment. You can also accompany that with a survey, a checklist given to the individuals. What do you have? What do you need? And work with local ergonomists to figure out what exactly is needed for all of those spaces. Next slide. So we know in some cases, one size does not fit all. So let's say you have someone that's 5'3" and someone that's 6'2". You have to weave into the mix the possibility of petite, taller used chairs. And we decided that we would color code them or mark them for easy ID, maybe assign some areas with them or have them for checkout. You know, have footrests available if necessary. Some people need alternate ergonomic keyboards and mice, possibly a keyboard tray, a document holder, or privacy screens. And then if you have these items, what we really want to do is make sure you include a lockable storage, either freestanding, like on the far right picture, or a mobile pedestal. And let's say mobile pedestals, we decided had to be about 21.5 inches so they could fit under the desks. Next slide. Another thing that's important is when you have hoteling or shared spaces, it's good to know who works where and when. So 2 ways of doing that. You can have pre-booking, where you use a reservation system, and you want to make sure it's easy to use and that it's real-time enabled, so you know exactly who and where people are. We have an existing room reservation system, and some of you may, and you can customize that to accommodate a hoteling workspace. Or there are standalone hoteling reservation systems that are available commercially. The other idea is a check-in process, kind of like a hotel where you walk up and a person checks in either with a person or with a computer and books their site right there. Some people have card access, but you want to make sure that that's woven into a check-in process so you don't have a lot of people with card access going to the same room. The other thing that's important is you want to have a point person, someone, if there are questions about IT or anything that someone may need, you have either a list, a person, a phone call, an email, so that you can really address people's needs right away so they're not frustrated. Next. The next thing we're looking at is ergonomic training. And we're trying to whip through this because I know we started late. Let's say you give someone a key card and a laptop and they go to a space, and like the picture on the far left, they sit in front of the laptop, head down, leaning forward. Not such a good idea, especially for long periods of time. However, with ergonomic training, here's another individual, I think this is Vanessa, and she's sitting there, up, good posture, leaning back in her chair, arms in a good position, and she's a little bit safer through training and practice. This can be done at home too, where you have somebody sitting at a dining room table with their arms up like that. I'm at a dining room table, but my arms aren't up like that. Or you can help them work in alternate spaces through training to create a workspace that's not unsafe, but a lot safer. Next. One thing that's important is people may have training, but they'll roll into their hoteling or shared workspace and just start working. And we really want to highlight the importance of doing adjustments when you get to your space. And I likened it to driving a car. When you get into a car, what do? You adjust the seat because it's not right, maybe the rear view mirror, side mirrors, and then you're good to go. So what's wrong with the workspace? People kind of balk at that. But if you come in and do a check, monitor seat, etc., make the adjustments according to best practices, and include good postures, reducing awkward postures with the mouse, the keyboard, and other items, you're really going to create a good so-called ride that's better during that day. So I encourage you all to include that. Next. We want to weave in environment, health, and safety concerns like lighting, sound, and temperature. I know in some spaces they have window coverings, and sometimes they're up and the sun goes through. So you want to make sure you have adequate coverings with controls, adequate ambient lighting, and think about task lighting if you need it. And for sound, if you're in a mixed space, you may want headsets, noise canceling, and also consider providing needs-based spaces, enclosed spaces for focus work, private work, quiet work, and open spaces for virtual or in-person collaborative work. And I heard one webinar that said they put microphones in the back of the room also, so that the people that are remote really feel a part of the process. And temperature is something you want to weave into the mix. Next slide. Because of the era that we're in, infection control is really important. So you want to contact whomever you need to in your organization. For us, it's environment, health, and safety regarding protocols, and really create a safe and effective manner to address general safety, cleaning, infection control. And since you're switching workspaces, you want to have a reset program that includes cleaning and storage. I know some companies are developing keyboards that are washable. Other companies have fabric for chairs that make them easy to clean. And you want to make sure that you provide the necessary supplies for folks. Next slide. And the last thing we wanted to weave in before we get to resources is you want to encourage people about some of the important things like postural changes, movement, not sitting at the computer all the time without taking a break, using those micro breaks, including for the eyes, 20, 20, 20, 20 feet to the distance for 20 seconds every 20 minutes, drinking water, and then weaving in breath awareness. Next slide. So now that we've kind of covered some of the basics, some of the setup, the best practices, I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa to give us some ideas about resources. Vanessa, it's all yours.
All right. Hey, everyone. So we've got a few more things to talk about. So, like Julia talked about, you really want to follow the furniture and equipment guidelines when setting up hybrid workstations to make sure that employees have all of the equipment they need to work safely. Once you have those guidelines, you want to implement them on site, whether that means making changes to existing workstations, maybe converting, single user stations to shared workstations, and then allow staff access to resources for continued guidance. So something that's pretty key when it comes to hybrid work considerations is work from home furniture. I know it's a pretty big topic right now, and so we really just want to highlight that you're really going for equitable solutions. Everyone can't have the same thing work for them. I know, especially being in the Bay Area, a lot of people don't have much space for home office furniture. And so they don't necessarily want, a big desk, or maybe they're trying to avoid adding another chair to their space. So there needs to be some flexibility in the solution to allow people to do what is best for them in their space. And however the program is rolled out, you want to consider the ease of implementation and also the funding sources. I know some teams are reducing their leased space because for us, we have a combination of owned and leased spaces. And so sometimes with the decrease in rent, they're using it to fund furniture. So one example of a case here at UC is department funding for work from home furniture. But it is very tied to ergonomics. And so it is, if staff are working remotely, they need to have an ergonomic evaluation. If ergonomics recommends any furniture, the department is required to purchase that furniture. But we just want to, point out that if ergonomics programs are usually fairly small, and so if all staff must funnel through ergonomics to decide what they need, that's a really strong bottleneck, especially because if you look at this picture of myself sitting at my desk, with my toddler's toys next to me, you can see that I need equipment just from looking at this. Ergonomists are not, I'm looking down, the desk is too high, I only have a laptop, I'm using a towel to, reduce the contact stress on the edge. So you don't necessarily need ergonomics to tell you that I need some equipment here. And so that's kind of what we mean when we say, it doesn't necessarily need to come from ergonomics, stating that something is needed for the space. Another option that's happening here is centralized funding. And so it's really tied to the telework agreement. So if staff are working from home 3 or more days per week, that telework agreement is formalized and submitted to human resources. Once that is done, the employee receives a link to purchase furniture directly, a chair and a keyboard. It's preset. They only have, 2 options of chairs and a desk, and they can pick the size. But because it's tied to telework, it's not the department having to fund it. They're not having to go to ergonomics to decide that something is needed. They're able to get what they should have to work from home safely. And so something that helps staff, know what they need and make adjustments is the online ergonomics training. So all UCs have an online ergonomics training for the office and also a hybrid online training. We actually use Cardinus. And so it really helps people to know the challenges and things that they should correct immediately. Our ergonomics teams are available to help and provide additional guidance, but with the online training and risk assessment, they're able to make immediate changes themselves. Beyond the trainings, we also have, a wide array of documents and resources for staff to review readily. We have this document on the left from UCSF campus about remote work, and this video on the right that is on YouTube from Clyde from Riverside about setting up safe workstations at home. There are also templates like this that were originally created for use with Workstation on Wheels that also work for on-site workstations and at home. Kind of just quick tips, especially if people are moving back and forth from the home to a shared workstation. They can reference this quickly and immediately make changes. There are also videos on adjusting your chair, like this video of Greg from UC Berkeley that is also on YouTube, and this document on the right from UCLA Health about proper use of keyboards and mice. Breaks and postural variation are also very important because sitting and standing are both static. Ideally, all hybrid shared workstations are height adjustable so that it can meet the needs of most staff. But, it's kind of like that saying, your next posture is your best posture. If you aren't getting up or moving, sitting and standing are both still static. And then, just to wrap up, it's really important with all of these things for teams to really work with their local ergonomics resources. And so, we have things like trainings, guidance, the tip sheets I've shown, but we really like to partner, with our fellow departments like HR and safety, facilities, IT, because sometimes people are having an ergonomics challenge, but it's really tied to another situation. So we want to make sure that people are able to get answers from the correct team. And so to wrap up, it's been a big shift this last year. A lot of changes happened very quickly. And so with the partnership approach, we can all be successful together. And I know we kind of had to zoom through this, but Julia and I are both readily available to answer any questions. We can share resources and guidelines. So feel free to reach out to us. Our presentation will be available, and those are our email addresses there. And thank you for joining our talk.
Thank you, and good luck, everybody, with navigating this shift.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.